All right, so I want to start this session with something really simple, but it's often forgotten when we talk about healing. I want to start by thinking about our emotions not as problems to fix, but to think of them more as, intelligent signals from your body that remembers everything, and even the things that our mind has tried to forget. We've talked about how the nervous system protects us, how it pulls us into fight, flight, freeze, or shutdown, not because it's broken, but because it's loyal, because it's trying to keep us safe. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to begin to explore what happens after safety begins to grow. It's what happens when we finally slow down enough for our emotions to start to surface. And for many of us, that's actually when things start to actually get harder. Because emotions are the language the body uses to tell the truth. And truth, especially after trauma, man, it can feel like fire. So, what I want to do is to take away from this night today, from this talk, is to see your emotions as not the enemy. I want you to see them as just information. They're just a way that our body is trying to communicate with us. And they're our body's way of saying, hey, there's something under here that needs your attention. And we've lived in survival for a long time. What we do is we learn to silence our emotions. We turn down the volumes on intense emotions like sadness. What do we do with anger? We push it away. Or fear is something we can just bypass. And we can even hide our own joy. Because feeling too much once came at a cost. So this makes sense. It makes sense that we do this. And little by little, your system has learned that, being emotional just wasn't safe. So it built what? Walls to protect you. But I'm also going to tell you what these walls start to do when we start to soften them. The emotions that you buried, they don't disappear. They wait. And they wait for a moment that your nervous system is strong enough, that you're strong enough or safe enough to finally listen. And that's where many of us are right now. We've built safety in our bodies. We're learning regulation, and suddenly emotion is coming up again. So, we can feel sad all of a sudden for no reason, just come out of nowhere. Or anger that surprises you, or grief. It feels like it belongs to someone else or to another time. Because, emotions are simply energy. And they're energy in motion. And what do? They move through us when we stop resisting them. And they get stuck when we judge them, when we suppress them, or try to think our way out of them or away from them. I want you to think about it this way. I want you to think of your body, or just imagine your body as an instrument. And your emotions are the sound that it makes when things go out of tune. And we don't just throw away the instrument. We actually listen to it. We tune it. We make tiny little adjustments here and there. We listen to what the instrument is asking for. And here's a story. I once worked with somebody who told me, I thought I was healing because I wasn't crying anymore. But then the tears came back, and I'm afraid I've gone backwards, right? And I remember when that conversation came up, and I said back, says, no. The tears actually mean that your heart feels safe enough to speak again. That's what I want everyone to understand tonight. When emotion shows up, it's not a setback. It's your system trusting you. It's saying you're strong enough to feel this now. And this is where we build the bridge from our nervous system into emotion. And your nervous system asks one question all day long. It asks the same question again and again. Am I safe or am I not safe? That's all your nervous system does. It's very simple that way. And when it decides you're safe enough, it hands the emotions, the microphone, back to your emotional world. To the part that says, all right, now we're safe. We can finally talk about what we're hurting, what we've buried, what we're keeping inside. That's why so many of us feel these emotional waves of intensity. After things calm down, after we're safe, after we've shown our body or taught our body that it doesn't need to brace anymore, and our body stops bracing. And then it's just like everything that we couldn't feel in the past, in those traumatic environments, guess what? They start to rise. And it's the most natural thing in the world. So if you wonder, why am I crying again? Why am I angry all of a sudden? Why does everything feel tender? Why is my system so sensitive? Well, that's why. Because safety, when we create safety, it actually makes our emotions possible. And that's good news. That's really good news. Now, I want you to imagine your inner world as a house. And this house, I want you to imagine it has 2 floors. And on the ground floor lives your body. And in your body, you got your heartbeat, your breath, the instincts, the protective reflexes. And then upstairs lives your mind. That's the stories, the meaning making, the understanding. Trauma separates these floors. Whether it's a set of stairs or an elevator between them, it stops working, it gets shut down. So you start to feel things without knowing why. Or you know things without being able to feel them. Emotional healing is when that elevator starts to work again, when those stairs open up again, and then suddenly you got this line of communication. Because when the body and the mind begin to talk, when your rational understanding connects to your emotional truth, that's what happens. and it's called integration, and that's exactly what we're looking for. And it's what we'll be exploring in the next part of this journey together. How to build that bridge with gentleness and awareness. Because here's the thing, right? It's like, you don't need to fix your emotions. You don't, because they're not broken. You need to just get curious about them. Say, oh, hi. What are you here to tell me? Because all this does is that suddenly you're safe enough to feel emotions again. And that right there is where emotional intelligence begins. So let's start learning about it, right? Let's learn the language of the heart. Now that we've started to understand how emotions arise once the body feels safe, let's talk about what those emotions are trying to tell us. Because emotions are not random. They're not. They're a language. They're a language. And a part of recovery is us learning how to listen. So let's start simply. Every emotion has a purpose. And I want you to understand it's not good or bad. It's just information. Emotions are just information. They're messengers. They're messengers that are carrying data, about, what's happening inside of you and all around you. And here's how that language tends to sound. Fear says, something might hurt me. Prepare. Stay alert. Anger. You know what anger is here to teach us? What kind of message anger teaches us? A boundary has been crossed. And sadness Sadness is here just to tell us I've lost something or someone that I care about. And guilt says I did something that doesn't align with my core values. And shame is, I am something that might not deserve love. And joy says I'm connected and I belong and life feels safe enough to open. I want you to realize that none of these emotions are mistakes and none of them are wrong. But what happens is they get distorted when we've lived in environments where feelings were punished. Why? Because emotions, like anger itself, is not the enemy, it's a signal. It's the body's way of saying, something doesn't feel fair here. And you know what? Something needs to change. And the same goes for sadness. Because, sadness is how your body honors what's gone. A person, a dream. Maybe a version of you that didn't make it as far as you needed it to or you wanted it to. And when you actually hold space for sadness, when you actually allow it to move through, you know what those tears do? It waters the soil where new life can grow. You know what fear is? Fear is the oldest protector that you have. It just wants you to know. It's just saying, are we safe yet? That's all it's saying. And when you meet fear with curiosity instead of criticism, you know what happens to fear? It softens. Once fear softens, it actually becomes intuition. Because this is emotional awareness. It's shifting from reacting to emotions to relating to them. And we can start connecting more with our emotions. You're going to start to know something really interesting. You're going to notice this. Is that emotions are layered. They're layered. They tend to be stacked on top of each other, and everyone has different emotions stacked on top of each other. But what you can find, and quite often, is like anger sits on top of hurt. And anxiety often hides behind grief. And shame protects us from feeling loved. So when you meet the surface feeling with compassion, whatever it is, what you're going to do is you're going to sit with it, and you're going to realize there's an emotion underneath it that begins to reveal itself. Once there was somebody that once I was talking to, and they said, "I'm just angry all the time," And when we slowed things down, what we found was beneath that anger was heartbreak. But beneath the heartbreak was love. It's a love that still wanted to give, a heart that still urged to connect, but had nowhere safe to go. And when you begin to listen to emotions without judgment, without rushing through them, something incredible happens. It's like your emotions stop controlling you. And you know what? We start using our emotions to guide us instead. So, this is what you got to realize is you don't have to manage your emotions. You just have to learn their language. Because every emotion wants one thing only. It wants to move through you. It wants to be felt. It wants to be understood. It wants to be integrated, to become part of you. And when you allow that movement, when you stop fighting yourself, you know what happens? You become steady, present. Your emotions. That's what they've always needed. That's what they're asking you to be. So, there are things that you can say to yourself just to make everything okay, right? You can say to yourself, whatever I feel, it can stay. Whatever this is, it can stay. And you can also say, whatever I feel, I can listen. Doesn't matter what it is. I will listen. And whatever I feel, no matter how intense, I can love myself through it. Because that is emotional awareness. And that is emotional intelligence at its very beginning. It's the very early steps. It's a point where it's just like not knowing all the answers, but just staying and waiting patiently, holding space, being present until the truth, the real truth, actually arises through it all. What you realize is healing isn't about calming your body. It's about befriending your heart. And that is where real peace takes place. So I hope you found this talk helpful. And if you have, I ask you to support this channel with a subscription, to like, to follow, and to subscribe to my newsletter. You can find it at www.narcovery.com, and come join me for the free events that I host regularly. And thank you so much for being part of this community. I really appreciate your support.